Hello and welcome back to The Hatch. I'm Rosie Murphy.
And I'm Sammy Roth, and this is the podcast where we talk about Lost.
We are still in Season 2, and this week we are discussing The Long Con.
It is a Sawyer episode. We get to see Sawyer pull off not one, but two long cons in this episode, which is pretty exciting.
Is it exciting or is it sad? We'll discuss.
It's awful.
We've also got the final part of Sammy's interview with Rick Romer, set decorator, with a couple more stories about working on Lost.
Let's get to it.
We are starting this episode as we start every episode with hot takes. Sammy, hot take on The Long Con.
Okay, so this is a little bit of a cheat. Rather than a hot take on the long con, I just wanted to go back to Fire plus Water for just a moment here.
No.
I did a poll on our Twitter account at the Hatch Podcast, for those of you who haven't followed us yet. And I asked, what your opinion was on Fire plus Water, and there were four options. 10% of you said, meh. 15% of you said, solid Lost episode. Only 15%. 30% said, one of the show's worst episodes.
Ooh.
And 45% say, why, Charlie, why?
Oh, I voted for that option.
Yeah, I mean, I did too. But anyway, not a lot of love for Fire plus Water, I hate to say. I mean, I don't hate to say it, I didn't love it either.
I did see one listener comment who said he thought it was an even worse episode than Stranger in a Strange Land.
Now that is a hot take.
That's a hot take, my friend. We'll see when we get there. We'll see.
Rosie, what is your hot take about the long con?
Do you think Jack overreacts? Not in general.
Yes.
But to... Obviously, Sun is attacked, and it's very scary. And obviously, this starting an army thing is already on Jack's mind. But it seems to me that we are seeing a transition in Jack away from, I need to protect my people, and we need to protect our little civilization here, toward, we need to go on the offensive. I think Ana Lucia is feeding some of that. But I also think something is just sort of changing within Jack in his opinion of the others and their level of hostility toward the group. And I don't have a strong opinion either way about whether or not that's warranted, but I'm interested in what caused it.
I think you're right. It kind of seems, to me at least, like Jack doesn't really like the truce.
Definitely.
Like, he seems unhappy with this compromise. He doesn't like that they've been threatened. Compared to Locke, who seems very happy here to be like, well, we've got a truce with them. And we've got to at least think that they're living up to their end of it, or be questioning why they wouldn't be. Whereas Jack comes out of that situation, you're right, immediately wanting to go on the offensive. I guess it's hard to put my finger exactly on what it is, but he definitely was not happy with how things went down in the jungle with Mr. Friendly. And I'm sure he didn't like that they tied Kate up and brought her out and held her at gunpoint. No. But they did, she was a bargaining chip, they did give her back. Which is not great and does not justify what was done. It's okay to take hostages as long as you give them back. Everyone knows this.
Anyway, just something I'm thinking about, and something I think going to be keeping an eye on for the rest of the season. But this episode is not about Jack, is it? This episode is about Sawyer. You were right in your tease when you said Sawyer pulls off two masterful but very upsetting long cons in this episode.
Yeah.
He's really playing three-dimensional chess here.
He is. That's one of the few situations where I think it's appropriate to use that expression.
One of the first times I've ever used it, and I think it works. So thank you.
Very nice. No, you're right. It's extremely upsetting, and I think it's more upsetting just for how masterful it is. This isn't just Sawyer,
because it was planned from the beginning. And...
Right. Yeah. He's not just going into a funk or a rage and pissing people off like he usually does. He went and he took the time to sit down and okay, how can I really, annihilate everyone and lie to them perfectly, and then he pulls it off. And I think there's
and also, how can I use the other people? How can I exploit the other people on this island to help me? Like, he certainly exploits Charlie. You know, he uses his jealousy and his anger at John Locke.
True.
He exploits Kate. He uses her suspicion of Ana Lucia and her relationship with Jack.
I think on the island, the hardest part to watch is how he cons Kate.
Yeah.
I mean, and I was just thinking at the beginning of this episode, forgetting that Kate was pulled into his con as well. Like,
same.
The scene where she sits down to read the magazine to him, I'm thinking like, oh, you know, like...
You want to read it to me? What, you got an appointment or something?
All right. 10 ways to tell if he's a sensitive man.
It's playful. It's
this
the kind
is
of
so pleasant.
But then as people keep telling us when we talk about why we like Kate and Sawyer, like when people keep reminding us, but don't forget Sawyer is a horrible person. It's like, oh yeah, like not only does this episode remind us of that, like he says it explicitly. I'm a bad person. I've never done a good thing in my life.
Right. Which, again, like one of the refreshing things about Sawyer is his honesty and his ability to read a situation and like succinctly speak the truth of it. But he is a bad person.
Yeah, no, he's right.
Yeah.
What did you think about the scene? I mean, the scene where he tells Gordy that he doesn't want to go through with it with Cassidy. I mean, I think he means it. I think I agree with you that he probably really did fall for her. Mm-hmm. But does that do anything to redeem him in this situation for you? That he is, you know, faced with this potential life or death choice if he doesn't go through with it, or does that do nothing for you? I'm kind of on the fence about it.
Well, so we know that at some future point, he sets up a trust fund for his and Cassidy's child, right?
This is true. Yeah, his and Cassidy's child.
Yes. So I take that to mean that he really did care for her in some way. And I think he does believe, because what does he say to Cassidy as he's sending her away? He says,
"You remember when you said I was all you ever wanted? No, now you know better."
Devastating line.
Freaking devastating line. But also true. And I think part of, maybe, I don't know if Sawyer has this amount of capacity or not, but part of what could be happening here is that he's pulling the sort of, like, I love you so much that I need to protect you from me. And, like, I have to let you go or I'll hurt you even worse or whatever. Like, that's one reading. I don't know if I believe that or not. But by sending her away and by fucking over Gordy, Sawyer gets to kind of cut short this relationship and not deal with any of the greater complexities that might come along with actually being with somebody.
Yeah.
He gets to protect her because he's sending her to some unknown location. And he gets to screw over Gordy, which I think he just kind of wants to do.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though.
And he gets $600,000.
Right, he keeps the money. Like, I would feel, I mean, like, if Sawyer is really screwing over Gordy here, and he's not, you know, going and giving this money to Gordy, which I think it's a good reading, although it's a little open-ended, like, he's still running away with the money. He could have let her go and pushed her out the back door and let her keep the money.
And actually given her the money.
Yeah. Given it to her is her money. She could have let her, you know, he could have let her keep it. He still stole it from her.
Right.
So,
good point.
I mean, like, I really want to see the signs here of, like, Sawyer really, you know, felt bad about what he was doing and wanted Cassidy to be okay, but he did take the money.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Rosie is shrugging, let the record show.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing good to say.
I mean, that's kind of the substance of it, right?
Yeah.
Like, did he know the whole time that that's what he was going to do? Or, you know, do you think there was ever a moment where he wavered? Like when Gordy called him out and said, you fell in love with her, didn't you? Do you think he was actually wavering, or do you think he always intended to go through with it?
Are you saying maybe he was conning Gordy?
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's interesting.
Yeah, because what if that was all a play to
keep all the money for himself?
Steal the money from Gordy or something, yeah.
Huh. Now that, I feel like we do this every week. We just find the darkest possible interpretation of that week's lead
darkest
character.
Timeline. Yeah, no, I definitely took that scene as, I don't believe him here. Maybe, but maybe not. Because why would he betray any emotion in front of Gordy? They've probably known each other for a long time, but they don't seem like buddies.
No, it seems mostly like
they seem
Sawyer
like business
owes him
partners
money.
who might kill each other
Yeah.
if someone steals, you know?
Jeez. Well, okay, now we've obliterated Sawyer, and he is terrible. So what else is going on this episode?
Well, we've also got Sawyer on the island.
We do have Sawyer on the island.
Who is being his usual amount of, like, lovable dick until it turns out that he has screwed everyone over. And I do think that Sawyer exploits something very real between Jack and John.
Yeah, let's talk about Jack and John.
Which is not necessarily bad. Like, something that deserved to be exploited. Like, they reach this very tentative truce where they agree to share the combination. And Ana Lucia asks for it and Jack declines, so he's being faithful to the truce. But then, as Sawyer is, going around sowing discord or whatever and stirring up Jack, or Kate is, rather, then Sawyer goes and stirs up John. But I think John makes the right call to change the combination, even though it's all kind of tainted by the con.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
I think...
And I do trust John more, because I think he's way less rash.
His instincts this episode are really, really good. Because first he has the instinct when he finds out about Sun being attacked, and Jack wants to, go run into the
right.
What does Jack want to do? He he wants to have some rash response. I'm forgetting the details, but Locke is questioning. He's like, really? Like the others would have done this? Like we just had a truce with them. I don't think this makes sense. Right. Which turns out
it's not consistent with anything they've done before.
Right. Turns out to be a great instinct. And then when Sawyer comes and asks after the guns, or tells him that Jack's coming for the guns, Locke's first question is, "Why are you telling me this?" Mm-hmm. As if he can sense that there's just something not right about this scenario of Sawyer coming to war. And then, of course, he doesn't let Sawyer do the moving of the guns. He makes sure that Sawyer is pushing the button while he does it, which, again, Sawyer is one step ahead of him, and he doesn't know that. But his instincts are right on. And so I definitely feel like I trust John more right now, watching how he handles this whole situation, whereas Jack is wants to go running into the jungle with guns again.
The truce between Jack and John is very uneasy at this point. Very. That is fraying and fraying fast. And they have decidedly become the leaders of this merry band. And they know that, which I don't think has always been the case. And they know they're going to have to get along, but...
I love the scene at the beginning of the episode where Jack asks Locke for the combination. And Locke does a little speech about how,
I'm going to go ahead and assume that you're asking me because you're worried that I might fall off a cliff or something. That it would be irresponsible for just one of us to have access to this room, rather than this being an issue of trust.
Well, there are a lot of cliffs on this island, John.
Yeah, it's this very... It's the chess game thing again. It's poker faces and just sizing each other up and seeing what might happen. And
No, but you're right. Sawyer, the thing about them realizing that they're the two leaders, Sawyer not only recognizes and exploits that, he says it explicitly in his speech. Well, you guys were too busy worrying about each other and didn't bother to worry about me. I wonder if that's part of it. I mean, I don't think Sawyer ever aspires to be the leader of the group, but I don't know, maybe he doesn't like being in the shadow of Locke and Jack, where they're making all the decisions and he's just kind of a sideshow. Maybe he wants to be the main show.
That's a definite possibility. I don't think he wants to be the main show, but I do think he'd like to be included. His role at this point is somewhere between the town gossip, hearing stuff and spreading it. But occasionally he's asked to play varsity. I'm mixing a bunch of metaphors here.
Right. You call up the gossip to varsity, I get it.
they occasionally bring him along on the trips and stuff, and I think he feels like, I have value and I should be, I mean, not in these words, but like I have value to this group and I should be recognized for that and like not treated like this asshole who hoards the medicine, even though that's exactly what he is. And perhaps he does not deserve any better than that. But yeah, I think he'd like to be included.
Yeah. I thought the question, I think Kate probably had the most interesting line this episode where she just asks Sawyer straight up, why do you do stuff like this? Mm-hmm. And I think we're given a lot of different explanations, and being in the, excluded from it, I think is one of them. His explanation is, I'm just a bad person. Kate's explanation is, you want to be hated. I think it's, his explanation is also like, tiger don't change its stripes. I've always been a con man. Right. I'm always going to be a con man. And probably it's a combination of all those things, but I think it's interesting that it's hard to pin down exactly why it is, out of the blue he decides to do something like this.
Right, especially because Sawyer's like character arc recently has been on the up and up. Like he's been, providing a nice foil to Jack with regard to Kate. He was injured, he recovered, like
he tried to save them all.
He's been a good dude for a while now. And it's like he just needed to remind us that he's bad, lest we start to think any better of him.
Yeah, I think that's kind of his explanation for it as well.
Yeah, I was getting a little too well-liked around here.
Yeah. It's a shame. Doesn't he know he can be a good guy?
Right.
Like, Sawyer, you could be a good guy.
We'll get there. But no, I think that really crystallizes, too, in when Charlie comes and sets up his tent over by Sawyer, and one of them says something about, like, Sawyer's not the most hated person on this island anymore.
Oh, yeah, Sawyer says that.
Sawyer says that. And I wonder if he doesn't think, like, that spot's rightfully mine. I better go. Reclaim it in a weird and twisted way.
James, man. Do you have any hindsights?
Yeah, I was just going to give a shout out to the Moonlight Serenade scene, which, if I recall correctly, is actually something that they hear from time travelers, right?
Is it?
I think it is. Because Hurley and Saeed are having a nice little exchange where Saeed says that could be from... who knows where it's from, and Hurley says something like, or when it's from.
No, you're right. In the recap episode Lost: A Journey in Time, producers Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse revealed that the radio broadcast was indeed from the 1940s and a product of time travel.
Yeah.
Well, look at that. Wait, the Lostpedia article also says, in 1944, a plane carrying Glenn Miller, whose orchestra did that song, and two other Army officers mysteriously disappeared over the English Channel. The aircraft has never been found, nor have any bodies.
How do aircraft disappear over the English Channel?
I didn't know that was how Glenn Miller died. That's very sad.
I guess it was in 1944, so who knows? But
we lost a whole airliner
World War II
recently.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, but that was like in the Pacific.
That's true.
It's a big, deep ocean.
That's a good hindsight. We've learned some things here. This has been a valuable learning experience.
Yeah.
Should we go to the Rick Romer?
I think that would be a good thing to do now.
Yeah, you've heard a couple of our segments with Rick Romer this year. He was a set decorator on the first few seasons of Lost. Real source of all kinds of fun behind-the-scenes stories.
Yeah, and this will be the last we'll hear from Rick, so thank you to him.
But the story was, if I remember correctly, but there's that one time when you ended up with Michael Emerson in the van on the way to the finale party.
Yeah, it was the second season wrap party. It was he had been in one or two episodes, just kind of barely, and so I'm guessing that was end of season 2. And he had made an appearance in a couple episodes, and they really liked him, and I happened to overhear that, and so we were all kind of jammed into this building, so sometimes you overheard things that maybe you weren't supposed to hear or whatever, and that wasn't anything bad. So I happened to be in the van on the way to, before the party or after the party, whatever. And he happened to be sitting behind me, and other than maybe seeing me on the set a couple of times, he probably didn't even know who I was. But I told him, I said, well, I just want you to know I overheard a little talking in the producer's office, and you are going to be back, and you are going to be seen a lot. And I said, yes, really. And not that it was, I caused it to happen, but it certainly did happen, and I was really happy for him because he was, very humble and very, just very professional. And, you find that more with stage people. A nice guy that you just wanted to say, hey, your career's about to take off. And, he would have found out sooner or later, but it was nice to be the bearer of good news and let him have a better summer than he might have otherwise.
I was just thinking, overall, with all the stories you've told me, and I'm sure there are so many more, and we could do this for hours, but you've kind of convinced me that you probably had one of the most fun jobs on this show.
I think I did. I really do. And because, props could have been interesting, but you're dealing with the actors directly.
Right, because props are things that the actors interact with, right?
Yeah, and they have to deal with the watch bands too scratchy, or my camera's too heavy, or they have other issues. It's not just a matter of finding it; it's a matter of is the actor comfortable with it? Does the director like it? And of course, then Jack has to like it. It's a lot. He had a lot more hoops to jump through than I did.
I was curious about this. You said when we were emailing before, you said that you had a great time while it lasted with only a touch of paranoia on Lost.
Yeah.
But I just was wondering, is the paranoia just the stuff with Jack, or is it something else?
Yeah, and just never quite knowing. Well, I didn't really have any real corporate direct anything. I know we had when after Lost ended, ABC, Disney tried 3 more shows in Hawaii. I'm not sure the viewers are aware of that. They did.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they did 3 more shows that all only went 12 episodes. They did one called Off the Map. I did the next one called The River, and then the third one was called Last Resort. And the River it was a thing where it was supposedly, I guess, the Amazon or something. It took place in South America, and the river would rearrange itself, and there were kind of like, I don't know, poltergeists or something on the scary things would happen. There'd be bad dreams, and there were some of the same Lost writers that the river had a following, but it just started getting a little too weird. But it had the same idea of I don't know that they were flashbacks or forwards. They were just we would do other sets that had nothing to do with being on this sort of haunted boat on this haunted river. The boat was incredible, though, and of course we don't really have any navigable rivers here. We have a river called the Kahana River, which for about 200 feet looks like a river, and then the boat had to turn around and go the other way. And it wasn't a boat; it was a giant block of styrofoam with pontoons or something, and it was it didn't have an engine or anything, but it was it was an okay show. But you kind of knew at the beginning it was not going to go. So yeah, they tried 3 times, and I guess based on the success of Lost, which makes you sort of wonder, how did they get it so right with Lost?
Right, it makes you wonder if they even understood what was so good about Lost.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's interesting because the same network, the same production company, put together and spent a fair amount of money on these other 3 shows, and just failed miserably. So, and will never be heard of again. But it was they tried, and then I think they that was 3 years in a row, three fall premieres, as it were, and then they finally gave up the studio, and that was that.
This is maybe neither here nor there, but just it makes me think another thing that I was thinking about as you told some of the stories about the kind of, equipment and stuff you brought on set. Like, they must have been spending wild amounts of money on the set.
You know what I tell people sometimes when they ask me what I did on Lost? I will actually tell them that my job was to shovel money into a furnace all day long. 20s, 50s, 100s, didn't matter. I just shoveled money into a furnace and to burn up. And then I would tell them, like, the time we spent like $3,000 on a shark harness that hung from a ceiling that could have been a work shirt tied in knots, and those kinds of things. But one of my favorite money wasting stories was there was an operating room scene. I don't remember if it was in the Hatch or it was just taking place in the past. And we needed a 1970s hospital operating room. Well, when you think about it, does any hospital anywhere have any equipment from the 70s? I mean, even 10 years ago.
I hope not.
I hope not, exactly. And in Hawaii, what is that going to look like if it's metal or foam or anything? I mean, and I was actually told to call all of the state hospitals and see if they have anything in storage in their basement. I don't think we have basements in state hospitals here, but it couldn't be full of old operating room equipment that, I mean, but sometimes, you do what you're told, you don't question, you do it. And luckily we had a second AD whose father was like head of state hospitals or something anyway, so that was a single phone call rather than multiple phone calls, and he said, I can tell you that there are no remains of any state. So anyway, I knew Craig Johnson, who was now the head of Alpha Medical in LA, and from my days of working there, a really nice guy, and was always really helpful. And he put together a set of photos for 3 different 1970s operating rooms. And of course, these needed to look relatively current 70s, not, oldie, moldy, rusty 70s. So, and you can only imagine what an operating room table weighs, or one of those overhead lights, or any of the equipment. I mean, insanely heavy. And so I made the presentation to the powers that be. These are your 3 choices. And if you decide soon, we can put it on a container and get it here, because it was before, it was after 9/11. Anyway, it didn't take as long as it does now. I think it's more than a week or something. But anyway, we could have gotten the stuff here by boat. And nope, couldn't decide. It all wound up having to be custom crated and flown over here. And I never saw shipping charges. I mean, it's like, so I don't care, but I'm sure that would have been another hour or 2 of shoveling money into the furnace if I did know what it was. And so they got what they wanted and paid for it. And
how much did that cost?
It had to be in the thousands and thousands. I mean, I worked on Phantom of the Opera here, that they had like 2 747s worth of scenery and costumes that they flew from Canada to Honolulu. You can have things done like that. You can move anything you want, but it was just such a huge waste. And what you saw, I probably could have built out of little foam rubber plywood and a sawhorse or something, and but again, sweaty heads with masks on. There's the operating room, but so yeah, it was. I'm sorry. I have a practical side to me. I don't like wasting money, especially when it's not seen on the air. And that was a huge thing with that show. I used to tell my guys, we could have shot that episode in the back of my van, and that was not too far off. And certainly no ceiling fans in my van.
If you're just going to see the eyebrows to the upper lip, I guess.
Yeah. No, it was a little frustrating. but because I did have a budget, and I've said this more than once. You can think I'm a lousy decorator, but I'm really good at budgeting, and I would hit those numbers right almost. I don't know, psychically, it was sometimes scary how close I was to the actual budget, not knowing what an operating room cost was going to be in LA. But yeah, but the show obviously made money. They made their money back so many times over on DVD sales, and it was a huge moneymaker for Disney and ABC. So that furnace just kept burning for the whole time I was there, and I suspect afterwards as well. But
it's funny. The one thing I've read that this makes me think of is I read that in the finale that the powers that be wanted to have this dramatic battle scene happening while a volcano was erupting.
Oh.
And I think that the story was that the corporate actually stepped in at that point and said, no, we're not paying to do an erupting volcano. Like, that was going to be too much for them.
Oh. Well, I hope somebody's getting some stock footage of what's happening now, because it's just amazing. But I mean, they can do everything.
Oh yeah, you guys have had a volcano going off over there.
It's apparently one of the biggest ever, and yeah, it's really it's a tragic situation. But anyway.
So last thing, if our listeners of the Hatch want to see what you've been working on recently, or what should they be watching? Where can they find you these days?
Well, you missed 4 really good operas at Hawaii Opera Theater last year. That was my last experience. Sadly, I won't be with them this season because they went quite a bit over budget and have had to drop half their season. So therefore, there really isn't that much work. But I did the Hawaii portion of the Ed Snowden film. That's been 3 years already. What's his name? Oliver Stone did here. But not, if you see the Supercuts commercial, that was me. But yeah, not too much. I dressed Ben Affleck's dummy in an upcoming Netflix film that they just finished here. I think it's currently being called Triple Frontier. It's kind of a bromance, let's go get the drug money, boys kind of film. There's the whole plot, and lots of action and stunts and things. But yeah, I'm just things have moved on, and they're bringing more and more over from Hollywood now. The days of local department heads is no more for the most part. They didn't really keep up with the shall we say the training and or experience of training people here, and we pretty much have lost the ability to supply department head level people. So it's now pretty much just automatic. Everybody comes from Hawaii, and that's how it was when I started. I was literally the first department head, and that was back on Magnum PI, and I'd opened the door for ups and special effects. And
that's interesting. So you've kind of seen it through a whole era there.
Yeah, I
started there, and hey, next time you've got a good project, let us know at the Hatch, and we'll be sure to alert our listeners about it.
Yeah. No, I'm happy to do this. I'm happy that there's still this kind of interest in the show, and that I was proud of it, and that anybody cares to hear what I can.
It's amazing the number of people who still care about Lost and want to hear from people on the show. It's super cool.
Well, Sammy, you had that conversation with Rick a few months ago. What stood out to you about that?
Overall, just with Rick, I was amazed by the level of detail that he remembered stuff with. Like, we talked for close to 2 hours, and we've just played selections of it here of the most interesting parts. But like, man, he would have talked for another 6 hours, I think, and kept telling stories about his time on Lost. Like he loved it, and he's I find it so interesting to think that his life is basically doing production for TV shows that film in Hawaii. That he's like a guy on the ground there. Who Hollywood companies will hire when they go in. And so I thought...
Well, and he keeps talking about all the people he knows on the islands who he can call up when he needs this or that.
Yeah. The story about how he had to go get, I think this was last week's segment, that he had to go get new stuff for the Richard Malkin house, and he just was like, running around like he had $60,000 worth of equipment in the back of his car, didn't sign for anything, and is just racing to the set. Anyway, we'll be back next week. We're going to be watching one of them. It is a Saeed episode, and it is also the arrival of our good friend Henry Gale from Minnesota.
Which means we finally get to play this interview that we've been teasing for you all season. Which is with Michael Emerson, who, of course, portrayed the beloved Ben Linus.
And we're going to hear from him over the next several weeks. He had a lot to say. He's the best. We love talking to him.
As always, you can get in touch with us. We are on Twitter at The Hatch Podcast, at Facebook.com/The Hatch Podcast.
You can find us on all of the podcast apps. I don't know where you're listening to this, but wherever it is, please rate us, review us, let people know that you're enjoying the show and that they should listen to it as well. We would really appreciate it.
Our many thanks to Danny Roth, who did our cover art, and Andy G. Cohen, who did our theme music.
We'll see you next week.
Namaste.